If the Louisville Cardinals want to defeat the Clemson Tigers on Saturday, one of the main things that they need to do is clean up the self-inflicting mistakes.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what is going on, everyone? Welcome into this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my fifth year covering the Cardinals, third year hosting this show, and I want to take this time to thank all of the everydayers for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Now, guys, today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We are just one sleep away from Louisville going down to Memorial Stadium, taking on the Clemson Tigers. We're discussing the three keys to victory. Just mentioned that they need to clean up their own self-inflicting mistakes. That is one of the main ones. There are some others that we need to discuss. And there's been some growing concern over the men's basketball recruiting of the high school realm, especially in the 2025 class. We'll deliver our take on the situation and whether or not you should be worried. And then to conclude the show, some good news, a new 2025 high school football commitment for Jeff Brom and the Cardinals. Jamarice Wilder, running back from Florida, has joined the Cardinals recruiting class after flipping from James Madison. So a lot of stuff to talk about men's basketball and football on the show today. We begin in the football realm. The Cardinals traveling on the road, Memorial Stadium, 7:30 kickoff on Saturday evening against the number 11 Clemson Tigers. Clemson, after losing that opening game to Georgia, has ripped off 6 straight blowout victories, and they currently have a perfect 5-0 conference record. Louisville, for lack of better terms, they have to play virtually a clean game, because beating Clemson is already going to be hard enough. Beating them on the road is going to be even harder. What makes things more difficult, combining those two, would be if you have to overcome beating yourselves. And I know that some have gotten into the YouTube comments of this show and said, are you only going to blame losses on Louisville beating themselves, or are you going to give credit to other teams? And I think that's the wildest narrative out there, that I don't give credit to other teams, because you can literally go back and listen to me saying, credit Miami's offense, credit Georgia Tech for making plays, credit SMU for making plays, credit Notre Dame for taking advantage of the situation. It's a weird narrative that I think it's just trolling at this point, because it doesn't make any logical sense. Especially when you do watch the games, you see the same issues pop up game after game after game. And what are those issues? Well, situational play calling and situational offensive execution in third and short, fourth and short. You have untimely turnovers. You have rough penalties. You have blown coverages on the defensive side of the ball, and much, much more. And then I think defensive play calling at times can definitely be thrown into the mix there. But like I said, it's really never the same issue. It's just sort of, a culmination of different issues every game coming to plague the Cardinals. And unfortunately, most of the time it's happening at the beginning of games. Like, Louisville has not had a clean first quarter since the beginning of the year. Like, you go back and look at the games. Georgia Tech, Notre Dame, SMU, Virginia, Miami, Boston College. That's, 6 consecutive lackluster first quarters? It's pretty clear to me that, yes, opponents do deserve credit in this discussion, but it's an obvious trend. And if Louisville wants to defeat Clemson on the road at night, they're going to have to play a relatively clean game because you're not going to beat Clemson and yourselves at the same time. Like, no disrespect to Boston College, but you were better than the Eagles to the point to where you were able to overcome it. You dig yourself into that type of a hole against the Tigers, it's going to be a long evening and not particularly a good one. So the first thing is you have to clean up the mistakes. Turnover-free football. Limit the penalties. Drive down the field. Be good in situational play calling. Limit the big plays. And put your defense in the best position to succeed. Now we move on to more of an analytical approach. The second key to the game for the Cardinals, in my opinion, is limiting Clemson quarterback Cade Klubnik on the ground. We know that he has developed a good amount of confidence through the air, and he has really proven me wrong. Now, people will say, well, Clemson hasn't played anyone. Sure, but the teams that they are playing, they're blowing out. I mean, they're having a pretty good 6-game winning streak, despite what you may say about the level of opposition. Because you say, well, Clemson hasn't really beat anyone. And I know that, the common opponent fallacy might be a little bit misleading, but I'll use it here. Virginia almost beat Louisville. Clemson beat Virginia by 17. They scored 48 points. Their offense is scoring a lot of points because it's a good offense. It's a great offensive coordinator. And one of the reasons why they've been able to do so is because Cade Klubnik has been the best dual threat quarterback in the conference. Now, notice I said dual threat quarterback because I don't really consider Cam Ward to be dual threat. He's a pro-style quarterback that is able to find the end zone around the goal line. He's great at scrambling, but I wouldn't really call him a dual threat quarterback. Cade Klubnik is a dual threat quarterback, and he has been really impressive. Top 3 quarterback in the conference this season. He has 1,800 passing yards with 20 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. But he also has 41 carries for 227 yards and 4 touchdowns, 5.5 yards per carry. So he doesn't get sacked a lot. Credit to his offensive line in that regard, but also credit to him for being able to evade pressure and being able to scramble and extend plays and drives with his legs. Louisville has had a quarterback spy issue all season long, and you best believe that Garrett Riley, Dabo Swinney, and company are going to try to exploit that. So if you let Cade Klubnik get whatever he wants on the ground, it's going to be a really challenging evening for the Cardinals. So you have to continually force him into third and long situations. And the way that you do that is you put up a ton of resistance against the Clemson rushing attack because Phil Mafah is a really good running back, one of the best running backs in the conference. But Klubnik's ability to extend plays on the ground, I mean, put it this way, the passing attack is already explosive enough with their young wide receiving core and a really good tight end and a quarterback with growing confidence. You let Cade get whatever he wants on the ground, and it's going to be challenging. You have to take away some of the bread and butter, so to speak, from this offense. And one of the things that they've really been able to do is allow their quarterback to just run free. And it is something that defenses really haven't been able to answer. And credit to him for being situationally aware in these times and in these scenarios to make the plays with his legs. So I think, number 1, clean up the mistakes. Number 2, limit Cade Klubnik on the ground. Number 3, we're going to go to the offensive side. It is limiting empty drives. I think Louisville is at the best chance of victory if this game gets into a shootout. I don't see a situation to where if Louisville doesn't score a lot that they're going to be in a better spot to win, because I do think Clemson's going to put up points. And I think that Louisville's offense is going to have to score a lot because Louisville's defense has been giving up a good amount of points. So you have to, you have to be able to get the scoring up to par as well, because Louisville's defense really isn't tooled to be able to do what they did last year. And that is, win a game while allowing a team to score, under 20 points. So if Louisville scores under 20, I think that there is a very, 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 very good chance they lose the game. But if they score closer to 40, then I think you have a different conversation. And that is relating to limiting empty drives. I think one Achilles heel for Louisville is that they get into opponents' territory and then the drives stall out. Tyler Shuck gets sacked. Play calling goes by the wayside. There's penalties, drops, turnovers, you name it. Louisville has to put themselves in a situation where every drive needs to result in points. Because the way that you're going to beat Clemson on the road is you have to score the football. You have to go toe-to-toe with that offense and say, hey, look, we're going to score. The only way you're going to beat us is if you keep scoring too. So you're putting some pressure on that offense. So I know a lot of this feels like a given, but with the same issues continually arising every single game, it feels like you have to talk about them because they're not being solved. So clean up the mistakes, limit Cade Klubnik on the ground, and limit the empty drives on offense. Score some points, for lack of better terms. We will have some more football discussion at the conclusion of the show when we discuss a new 2025 high school football commitment. But speaking of recruiting, fans are starting to get uneasy and concerned about Louisville's 2025 recruiting efforts. In the high school ranks, I should clarify, on the men's basketball side. Should you be concerned? We'll answer that coming up on the next segment of Locked On Louisville. Cardinal fans, we've been having such a great time keeping it locked on right here at 5 Hour Energy. Our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like us. The fans who are first in the parking lot and who are last to leave, we see you. You know what else gave me a bit of Louisville fan fuel this week? The Cardinals going 2-0 in exhibition play, which you would think would be a given. Previous years, it's proven not to be. 99-54 victory over the Spalding Golden Eagles gave me that shot of fan fuel. 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help keep you fueled throughout the season. What's your favorite fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy. Available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. Cardinal fans, thanks again for being an everydayer of the show and making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, if you don't already know, the show is free and available on all streaming services, 5 days a week. Your team, every day. There's been some growing concern amongst the fan base, and I had some people reach out to me who thankfully are friends of the show, been watching the show, and I'm so very appreciative of that. But they brought up some comments that I made in the summer about this exact issue. And the correspondence, I'm not paraphrasing here because I'm not looking at the messages, but they basically asked me, with your comments in this summer about how you weren't concerned now, but if Louisville were to go into the winter with no 2025 high school commitments, there might be a different conversation. How has that changed your perspective? And it made me start to think because, first of all, it's really, really odd that we are now – it's wild how quickly time goes without ever seeming like it. Like we're going into the 9th game of the season for the Louisville football team. The basketball seasons for men and women's basketball start on Monday. And it's November 1st today. That's wild to me. There's 2 more months left in the year. I digress. It's not time to get I don't even know the word was symbolic, if you will, and philosophical. But it did make me wonder because Louisville has missed out on some recruits since then, London Jamison was one of the players that was down between basically Louisville and Alabama, chose Alabama. Shelton Henderson seemed like a Louisville Duke battle. He's going to be choosing Duke coming up here in the next couple of days. Nate Ament, five-star big man, won't decide until the spring. We still have a chance to recruit him, but I think that he's probably a pretty considerable Duke lean at the moment. So I think one thing that worries the majority of the fan base is just the lack of information. It's not ideal that Louisville doesn't have a commitment on November 1st. I don't think it's the end of the world. One thing that I will say is that it's still early in terms of Pat Kelsey's tenure. And I feel like a lot of recruits, highly rated recruits, are probably in wait and see mode to see how the Cardinals look on the court because there is a certain level of uncertainty with Pat Kelsey as a Power 5 head coach and whether or not his system will work at this level. I know those listening to this show probably agree, unless you're one of those UK fan trolls that consistently tune into this show. Thanks for tuning in, I guess. But I do think that that's playing a factor. But I also agree to the devil's advocate point of it's not ideal that they don't have a single commitment. And is it, I know that there's been some takes that, well, Louisville doesn't really want to overbid for, a top player when in all reality, the market is so messed up at the moment in terms of asking prices that to get a top prospect, you have to overbid. So there's been a lot of give and take in that discussion. I think that we're gearing up to have a really good 2026 class. That's going to be the class that you really are able to take off on. But as it relates to the class now, I think that there is some international scouting going on, and obviously there is an emphasis on scouting in that realm because there's more uncertainty because of the lack of film and things of that nature. But if Louisville adds a couple of international prospects to this class, I'm not going to be upset. I do think that you do need to get a crown jewel of the class, so to speak, and hopefully that is Michael Brown Jr. At this point, it feels like that's the one prospect that Louisville's like really, really pounding the pavement hard for. But at the same time, we'll see what happens with Nate Ament. We'll see what happens coming up in the next month or so. Don't forget, Kenai Roots was a player that, Louisville was waiting after, he decommitted and they jumped right into that recruitment and then they got a commitment right after that. So it's not ideal. Don't take this as me saying it's completely okay because, it's not okay to not have a commitment on November 1st when signing day is literally less than a month away and you see, names flying off the board. But I don't think it's the end of the world. I think that Louisville's going to use the portal a little bit more like we thought. And it's easier to do that in the basketball side than the football side to address the team. And there's going to be some players that we think will come back from this year's team. And I do think that they're going to have a high school class of, anywhere from 2 to 4 guys, as they probably should. It's not going to be a class with 6 to 7, but 2 to 4 is a pretty good number. I just feel like as a fan base, we're so jaded from the past 2 years of one of two things. Number one, Louisville just basically not recruiting. And this whole, Kenny Payne's moving in silence. Anyways, some of the things that people said and some of the things that people used as justification in the past 2 years was downright hilarious. And I kept it pretty relaxed on the show, but I'm thinking to myself, like, okay, at some point we're going to have to talk about it. And was like, well, we're in the past. Well, you're seeing the fan base still sort of suffer the effects of that, coaching regime. Either they weren't recruiting the high school ranks or they did. And people were saying that, well, this guy's committed here, or this guy's going to come here. Just wait to see who he's got coming. And then the statement, the evergreen statement of things change. it's sort of jaded the fan base to where we're all kind of nervous. It's like we have PTSD, and I don't think that that's going to be the case with Pat Kelsey. You know that they're working hard. It's just a matter of if you have to overbid for a top prospect, you have to overbid. And I know that they're working. People that I've talked to are still confident in the 2025 class. So I'm not going to panic. That's the whole mantra that I should have stated from the beginning. But again, don't panic. It's not ideal, but just wait to see if Louisville starts to win games early on, how recruiting is going to pick up. So not really worried at the current moment. But let's end the show on some good news. The football program picked up a 2025 high school commitment from, you probably could have guessed it, the state of Florida. We'll break it down on the final segment of Locked On Louisville. Cardinal fans, if you haven't already, I really question why you haven't. But if you need any more incentive to join FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, NBA, college football, all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Once again, you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if that first $5 bet wins. Louisville is currently a 10.5-point underdog at Clemson. I think money line is like plus 310, and there is a 25% college football parlay boost. So some very intriguing options on FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Cardinal fans, thanks for keeping it locked on right here on the Locked On Louisville. Going back to the football side of things, the Cardinals got a 2025 high school commitment. It's been the first commitment in quite some time, but they got one, and it was a flip. 3-star running back Jamarice, and I apologize if I'm saying that wrong. I had to, reference some other YouTube videos on how to say his name. I think it's Jamarice. It's Jamarice, Jamarice Wilder. Flipped from James Madison to Louisville after getting the Cardinals offer on Wednesday evening. Very, very easy decision. It seemed Wilder was originally committed to Colorado, decommitted from the Buffaloes program in 2023, made a couple more visits, committed to James Madison in late June of this year, and now has flipped to the University of Louisville. Let's take a look at the some of the bio here. Wilder is 5'9", 180 pounds, 3-star running back according to 247sports.com, just outside of the top 1,000 in the 24/7 Sports composite, just inside of the top 150 prospects in the state of Florida, and just outside of the top 75 running backs in the country. 5'9", 180 from Venice High School in Venice, Florida. For those that don't know where that is, it's about, I think, 20 minutes southwest of Sarasota. So it's in between Sarasota and Cape Coral, Punta Gorda, Fort Myers on the Gulf side, a little bit under halfway down the Gulf side of the state, closer to the Sarasota, Bradenton area. So watching the film here on Wilder, some things that I was able to kind of come away with was I was impressed with the vision and the patience he has when he gets the ball. Almost kind of gives me like LaShawn McCoy, Le'Veon Bell type vibes. Now, obviously, I'm not saying that he's going to be as good as either of those two NFL great running backs, but when he gets the ball, it's like he has no issue being patient and scanning the field for any type of a gap. And when he does hit that gap, it is decisive, it is with intention, it is with power. 5'9", 180 pounds. he's not necessarily a speed back or a power back, but he has, sort of a combination of both. Pretty elusive with his ability to cut up field, solid agility. I wouldn't really say he has top end speed or agility. Like, I wouldn't compare him to Isaac Brown, but with what he doesn't have with elite level of speed, he makes up for it at the high school level with that decisiveness. I like how I'd had to go back to the YouTube video, but there was a Colorado reporter talking about this commitment when he committed a couple years ago, and he used the word conviction when discussing Wilder's rushing tendencies, and I agree with that. I think that it's full of conviction because whenever he makes a decision, he goes for it. And I think that level of decisiveness mixed with the vision, the patience, the elusiveness, I think that gives him the edge. And I think he's a pretty good player. You have to hope for Jeff Brom's sake that he is one of the Florida recruits that have gotten overlooked because of the number of highly talented players throughout that state. Let's take a look at the offer sheet for Jamarice. I won't say it's an elite level offer sheet, but it's not terrible. There are some pretty solid offers. Now, granted, we're assuming that this is correct. Sometimes it is. Sometimes I would say most times it is, but sometimes it isn't. The Power 5 offers that Wilder has: Boston College, Cincinnati, Colorado, Indiana, Michigan State, Pittsburgh, Central Florida, and West Virginia. Well, Power 4 now. I keep wanting to say Power 5, but Power 4. So I think that the potential is there. I think he can be serviceable at the Power 5 level. I'm not sure what the ceiling is because of that lack of top-end speed, but we've seen players at Louisville not be all, that fast, not elite at the speed portion of things, but they have good vision. They have good, decision-making, and they're able to hit the right holes and run tough with the football, and they've been successful. One thing that I think benefits Louisville here is that the Cardinals won't need him to be great right away because assuming that they can keep both Duke Watson and Isaac Brown are going to be a great 1-2 punch for at least the next year. At least the next year. Could be the next 2 years. But I'm okay with this commitment. I think that Jamarice is a pretty solid player. He joins Jaylen Brown, also from Florida, West Palm Beach, from Cardinal Newman High School. Jamarice is ranked a little bit higher than Brown, not by much, but the Cardinals have 2 running backs in the class. They will possibly / probably lose Don Chaney at the end of the year. You imagine that they're going to also lose maybe another player to the transfer portal. We will see. They lost Penny Boone before the season. So I'm okay with this commitment. I think it is a nice pickup. I'm not sure what the ceiling is for Jamarice, but he runs hard. He's got great vision, has solid patience, and again, trust Jeff Brom. That is going to wrap up this Friday edition of the show. When we come back, maybe Sunday or Monday, we will recap the Clemson game, hopefully a win. Might do a little bit of a preview for the Morehead State matchup on Monday, and much more. Be sure to stay tuned. Have a great weekend. Go Cards. We'll see you right back here really soon.